afternoon, Tim. How are you today?
Very well. Nice to meet you, Paul.
And yourself? And very excited to actually have this interview today because I understand you've written a book, which we're going to talk more about. And we've been chatting offline, getting to know each other, sort of briefly. But for the benefit of our audience, it'd be really great to get your origin story and understanding of what brings you into this industry.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Vice President of Climate Action at Salesforce, but I obviously didn't always work in a large corporate environment. I'm a forester by training, and I think ever since my childhood, I was interested in what is our relationship with nature as humans, and studied forestry, and then I worked for a large NGO for a while, International Union for the Conservation of Nature, that does the red list of endangered species. And then for 15 years, I worked for the United Nations. I was responsible at the UN Environment Program, UNEP, for the Nature for Climate team. So I ran large forest conservation program of tropical forests. And my last role at the UN was to set up the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, which is a decade that we're in. So it's the 2021 to 2030. And then 3.5 years ago, the Salesforce team approached me and asked me if I wanted to lead their climate program. And to be honest, I had never really thought about working for the private sector. When you're in public sector, you're in public service, right? You don't
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
consider other options, but they were very insistent. And as I got to know Salesforce and what a special company it is in many ways, I thought this was really a great way to work with the world's Fortune 500 companies and thousands of other companies to talk on a peer-to-peer level about what sustainability really means for them. Why is climate an issue for big companies? Why is nature an issue for big companies?
Mm.
So that's what I've been doing for the past few years. And now put that all into a book, which is coming out soon.
Let's talk about the step change. So you made a step change from the public sector to this corporate. What was going through your mind? What did you feel that, did you feel that you could make a difference there straight away?
I feel and still do that I could make a different difference there than at the UN. Of
Right.
course, the United Nations is a very important organization and has a unique role in the world. What I feel though is at this stage that we're in, when we are in a climate crisis, and we're all starting to feel the impacts coming closer, whether you work in energy or finance or other sectors, you can see that supply chains are getting disrupted, and there are impacts that are coming closer for all of us. So I thought we really need a step change in the speed and scale of the action that we see, and that is where the private sector obviously excels
Mm.
with that innovation, the what we call ecopreneurship, the making this line of business rather than just public sector funded or grant funded activities, and then the sheer speed and scale at which things can happen in the private sector. So I wanted to be part of that. And then, of course, shortly after I joined Salesforce, the real strong pivot towards AI happened. So we're now on an even faster potential
Yeah.
solutions curve with AI coming into the picture. So yes, I feel I can make a difference in the company for sure.
And can you tell us much about or can you tell us some more info about when you was working in the forests and things? What was happening there?
So Salesforce is the global leader on customer relationship management, and it's a software company. You'd think there's not much relation with trees, but when I worked for UNEP, we worked with Salesforce and the World Economic Forum to set up an initiative
Right.
called the Trillion Trees Initiative to conserve and restore a trillion trees, so about 1/3 of all existing forests. And that was in 2020. And Mark Benioff, who's the CEO and chairman of Salesforce, is very invested in forest and ocean issues himself. So he put a lot of efforts into these activities. And then Salesforce just kept asking for my advice, how to run this initiative and what to fund and who to work with and where to restore forests. And at some point they said, why don't you just come and work for us? So as Salesforce, we have $100 million nature and sustainability grant program. We are a large buyer of carbon credits. We compensate for all our what is called scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions.
Hmm.
We are front runner in establishing nature-based solutions in the voluntary carbon market. And we also invest in our own commitment to conserve and restore 100 million trees by 2030. So that's part of what my team is responsible for here at Salesforce.
And where are you on that journey? How many trees have
We're
hit to
at
date?
56 million, so we have 44 million to go.
Wow.
It's a fun challenge to be honest, but it's actually harder than it sounds because doing forest restoration in a holistic and durable way is takes a lot more than planting trees. And
Yeah.
often nature is, of course, the best ally for restoring forests and generating new trees, new regrowths. So that's an ongoing journey. And we
Yeah.
work with over 90 other companies
Yeah.
in the Trillion Trees Initiative.
And what particular regions are we focusing on?
We have projects in over right now in 15 countries. In future, we're going to focus more on key regions where we also have a lot of staff and large markets because we can then be closer to those projects. So that will be Brazil and Latin America, India, a lot in the US, some in Canada, some in the EU, some in Australia. So those are the priority regions where we invest in forests.
Because
And
it's a timing issue as well, because when you plant the trees, it's not an instant carbon absorption, is it? We've got to wait for years or whatever before that gets to a size before it can start. But you were saying
depends a
about
bit on
you've
it, it
got
depends a bit
restoration as
on
well.
it depends a bit where you are. In the tropics, it of course goes a lot faster. And
Right.
in the temperate zones here, we live on a farm and we also this is a private investment, but turned one of our fields into a forest two and a
Wow.
half years ago, planted 30,000 trees here. And they already, I mean, most of them are now taller than I am, and the forest is establishing itself fairly quickly. In the tropics, that goes even faster, but you're right that forests accumulate carbon over a long period of time. So it is a long-term investment. One thing we focus on at Salesforce as well is to locate where we have water dependencies as a company, either because we have large offices there or because we have data center dependencies. As you know, data centers
Yeah.
consume a lot of energy, but also a lot of water if they're still water cooled. And we invest in areas where we need to replenish watersheds and increase the resilience of those forest watersheds.
Yeah.
That actually includes London, which even is a water-stressed area.
Yeah.
One wouldn't think that, but
No,
um,
we do know. You've
yeah,
got issues around there. Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. You've answered one of my questions because I was going to say, do you ever get the shovel out and dig and plant your own trees? Which I'm sure the ones in your land on your land you have done. You've contributed to that, yeah.
Unfortunately, the 30,000 trees were planted by a huge tractor, because
Right,
it actually only took them 2 days to plant 30,000
right,
trees. There are two
right.
people sitting at the back of the tractor. They had all the seedlings in
Yeah,
large
yeah,
bags, and then they with 26 different species. So luckily, I didn't have to do that with a shovel, but I've planted maybe 50 fruit trees, different fruit trees around the farm, and
yeah,
that's a lot of fun. So
yeah.
anybody who has not planted the tree themselves, you should definitely try to do that somewhere.
I
It's very
I've
gratifying.
planted 7 mango trees in my garden in Thailand, so
Oh,
I know
beautiful.
what
I
it's
was going to
like.
say, hopefully not in the UK. That's
No,
they
that'd be
wouldn't
a
do
waste
too
of
well there.
time. They won't do much. And I'm looking to buy some land in Thailand to plant some trees. So maybe when I get my land, I'll come and talk to you, and we can do
Absolutely,
something together.
absolutely. Would love to.
Yeah, and we can read our books under the shade. Then, can't we? That'd be a good
That would be
idea.
very nice. Yes.
Um, And tell us, we talked about this earlier offline about your accent. Tell us about your personal journey, where you've lived and sort of the sights you've seen, basically.
I grew up in northern Germany in a small rural area, and there's not really much to do other than be out in nature. So I spent a lot of time fishing and camping and being in the forest. And my grandfather was a forester and took me for long walks through the forest. And when I was very young, I sort of perceived nature in a very different way than as an adult in terms of more feeling what the energy level in an ecosystem is, if you want, if it's resilient and very vibrant and alive. And then later, when I studied forestry, you tend to see nature more through a lens of metrics and the scientific names of plants and how much money you could get for a standing volume of timber. So I looked at nature very differently, but this relationship with nature in the sense of place that we all can have. That is really what I'm trying to pursue now again, to get that connection back that I had as a child, feeling with nature. And that is, of course, very widespread in indigenous communities around the world, this
Mm.
sense of place and belonging to the land. But I've moved around the world with my family. We lived in Kenya, in Nairobi, the last 10 years, at the UNEP headquarters. We lived in Canada for 5 years and Brussels for 5 years. So, and now we live in central Denmark. So we've been to different places, but what has always been the guiding principle for us is to ensure we're on a journey towards a deeper relationship with nature.
Right.
And that's what my book is about. So it blends sort of my professional experience and how to invest in nature and what to do to save the climate, and at the same time halt biodiversity loss. And it blends that with my personal experience and our experience now of restoring the farm, which is an ongoing adventure.
And you mentioned children earlier as well. We was joking about the internet speeds and things. Are they following the same path so that are they manage to sort of overlap into this as well?
So our daughter is 13 and our son is 17. And when we moved from Kenya to back to Europe, which, as you know, is sometimes cold and gray, they weren't very happy at that time, but they're more reconciled with it now because, of course, there are some advantages we take for granted in the so-called developed world. For example, functioning governance and functioning institutions, and these are very precious achievements of civilization that don't exist in all parts of the world. So we have
Mm.
to really be aware of that and cherish that and maintain that. They follow in the same footpath in the sense that they've both reviewed and edited the book, and they've been very helpful in giving me
Fantastic.
feedback. So I'd like to think that it's been a bit of a co-creation with my family.
That's fantastic. A family approach. Did they stamp their mark on the book in some way?
Yeah, they did. For example, one of the stories in the book I relate is that my daughter, this was a few years ago, and she came to me one day and said she was so shocked about what humans were doing to the planet, and that she thought humans were a disease on the planet,
Wow.
literally, right? So, and this
That's
is
a strong
actually
word. That's
a
a strong
strong
word.
word. We
Yeah.
were ruining this place. And I thought about that a lot and then have spoken with her a lot of times since then, that I think this is, of course, humans can damage nature and the natural environment, but we can also heal it and repair it and build a
Yeah.
new relationship.
Yeah.
In a sense, we are ecosystem engineers, just like elephants, which you mentioned earlier when we spoke,
Yeah.
and other uh, ecosystem engineers that can shape an entire landscape, an entire seascape. We've just forgotten that we have that benign and that healing and guardian, the gardening ability, if you want, to really
Yeah.
shape nature in a way that is mutually beneficial. So I've had many talks with her since then. I think she's come around to the view that we can also do good if we really want to. It's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, because I think when there are there's a lot of eco anxiety these days with young people when they look at climate change and what is happening, and they don't really know how to tackle that and what to do.
Mm.
So I wanted to write a really optimistic book that gives us clear guideline what we can do and how to change our relationship with nature, how to make peace with nature, if you want.
Yeah. Going back to your daughter, and I think overall around the world, I don't think there's enough education in schools about that, about the climate change and the environment and what's happening there. And you talk a lot about, the biodiversity of it all, and the healing, etc. And I think we're just individuals are picking up the wrong part rather than being educated. I think we need to go back to basics and educate people from day one.
Yeah,
In the
one thing that's really interesting is that we are all very used to talking about the economy, and that's in the news every day, and we all
Yep,
follow the economy and what's
yep,
happening with GDP. And if you go to the root of the word economy, it comes from ancient Greek oikos, which means our common home or our household.
right,
And the economy is the management of our common household. Ecology is the knowledge of our common household. So we basically run this entire planet without the basic ecological literacy that we need to even know how things work.
yeah,
And this is, I think, part of the reason why we are running so many things aground right now, because we don't have the basic ecological literacy.
mm,
So one thing that I call for in the book is this global ecological literacy that everybody can learn through easy and fun steps. It all starts with your food, right? Where does your food actually come from?
yeah,
And like many good relationships, the relationship with nature starts with good food. So just if we try to track where does our food come from, who grows it, where is it grown? Is it grown in a regenerative way? Is it destroying the environment? And then the next step is our water. Where does that come from? How many of us know actually where exactly our water comes from? But it's easy to trace if you want to know.
yeah,
And then a third step is what species share my environment, what species live around me, and what does nature do for me? For example, if you live in an urban area, trees literally can save lives in urban heat islands, in heat waves. They can lower temperatures, they ensure that you can still go outside during heat waves. There's a marked difference in temperatures in areas that are green in cities versus areas that are not green. So understanding these basic ecological principles and that basic ecological literacy is easy to do for all of us, and it's important to know. It's also fun to learn.
yeah. It's amazing what agriculture and things can do to the environment. And I'm going to give you a simple story. So when we first built our house in Thailand, we didn't have no grass. We didn't have a garden. We just had the bare sort of mud as such. We had planted our trees, but we hadn't really got round to the grass. We had someone come and lay all the grass, get the garden ready. The minute we had the grass put in, the temperature in our garden dropped straight away. It was just overnight we could feel cooler. The sound of birds singing was more. It's crazy how the environment just changed as we then started to heal it. We were starting to heal it ourselves because we was replacing all this mud with grass and trees, and it was amazing step change. And to see that personally happen, it made me one smile and feel that is what we need to be doing. If it's changing, if I can change the temperature of this that small area, what could be the whole planet could be doing? Now, if we
That
focused on,
that is absolutely right. There's actually new science on exactly that point that shows how much cooling effect we could generate just by ensuring there's basic vegetation cover. And as one
yeah,
of those principles of regenerative agriculture that people now talk a lot about, is to just keep the soil covered. Because as soon as you open it up, not only does it absorb a lot more heat, in some cases, it also loses the carbon that is stored in the soil.
yeah,
It sort of literally evaporates as
It
there's
loses
no
like the
soil
filter.
cover.
There's no filter there for it, is there?
So we definitely have to move to an agriculture where there's much less tilling, there's much less turning off the soil, because every time we turn the soil, we also disrupt the amazing microbiodiversity that there's in the soil. You know this statistic that, in a spoonful of soil, there can be more organisms than there are people on Earth. If
Yeah,
you have a very vibrantly alive soil biodiversity with all the fungi and bacteria and
yeah,
different microorganisms that are in it. So that soil biodiversity is actually what produces our food. So we need that biodiversity. And unfortunately, modern agriculture is more geared towards replacing that diversity and nature's flywheel with expensive fossil
mm,
fuel-based inputs and industrial fertilizers and pesticides. And we've come to the end of the road where that is even financially still viable. We have to get back to, in a way, a century of biology, because we've been used to driving everything through the lens of chemistry and physics, and that's no longer good enough. We need a century of ecology to come back to those principles that nature creates diversity and abundance, and then it's our prerogative to harvest from that diversity and abundance, but we have to keep that flywheel of life going. If we stop it, there'll be no more abundance for us.
yeah. Uh, Earlier when we was talking, you flicked your book up, but I didn't really focus a lot on it because I knew we was going
Happy
to
to do that
do this.
again.
Es- can you tell us about the cover and some of the, I don't want you to read it out as such, but can you give us some insights to the book?
So the book has a foreword by Jane Goodall, who sadly passed away just this
Oh,
week, as you know. And she wrote a foreword, which I was immensely grateful for, in which she calls for a transitioning of industrial agriculture and a lot of things that we need to do in our time. And then the book starts with a chapter on what I call the 10% world, because we live in a world that is really just a fragment of the natural wealth we once had. Just to give you one key info point is that of all the weight of mammals in the world, only 4% are wildlife. The rest are humans and livestock.
right.
We've lost over 70% of all wildlife population since the 1970s. So we're really in a nosedive when it comes to the natural world. But people tend to forget that because each new generation takes the degraded state of the environment for granted, which ecologists call shifting baseline syndrome.
Mm,
So then I move on from that to how we can repair this 10% world into a 100% world, which would make all of us better off, happier, healthier. There would be a lot more abundance. We could stabilize the climate in the process as well.
yeah,
But first of all, we need imagination to know how that works. And then we need to change our view of nature from something that's nice to have and lives in some national park somewhere to our most essential infrastructure for human civilization. Nature is our balance. It's not just a line on the balance sheet, but we also need to invest a lot more in nature to rebuild that basic infrastructure, to keep our cities cool, to keep water running in our pipes, to
yeah,
keep the climate stable, to keep producing nutritious food. And then I close out with personal experience from projects around the world that I've seen where this is already happening at a massive scale.
yeah,
So this is happening around the world already, and it's. I just wanted to make sure there's more people aware
yeah,
of what is generation restoration. This is our generation's task. This is our moonshot, if you will, to restore planet Earth's ecosystems at planetary scale.
yeah. And will the human being notice much change if we do these step changes? If that makes sense?
Oh, absolutely. To just give you the example from our farm, just in the 2.5 years that we have planted a forest and pollinating flower strips, and we've dug out 2 lakes. There's a massive rebound of nature that we observe, both in terms of the number of birds, the insect diversity. We did some echolocation here over our lake, and there's 15 species of bats in Denmark, and 8 of them are already back
Wow.
over our field now, which weren't there before when it was a monoculture. So how quickly nature bounces back is astounding. I think we would all really very fast realize the increased abundance that we can get back. And that would, of course, make us happier because it's just so nice to be in nature. But it would also secure our food supply, it would secure clean water, it would
Mm.
secure energy in many countries where hydropower is the predominant form of energy or biomass. So it is important for all aspects of life, but we tend to think about nature as some afterthought of, take nature for granted because nature's always been there.
Yeah.
And now we have come to the point where we've overdrawn our natural capital bank account. So our checks are starting to bounce. And when that happens, you have to take some pretty drastic measures if
Yeah.
you don't want to go bankrupt. And this
Yeah.
is where we're at now.
And we need to make those decisions now, right this minute, don't we?
We have to, but the good news is that this is imminently feasible, and it's also not even that expensive if you compare it to round about $1 trillion per year, which would be so the minimum investment back into nature. That's about 1% of uh, GDP of global economic output. So that is a very small amount, and private investments in nature are already increasing every year. They've gone up 11-fold in the last 4 years to over 100 billion per year. There are
Mm.
now more and more nature-based solution investment funds that invest money in this new asset class called nature, which is of course not a new asset class, really. It's nature is, when you look around you, most of the things you see where bricks or wood or even steel or cement, everything comes from nature. All the food we eat comes from nature. So it's not a new asset class as such, but investing in restoring nature, regenerative agriculture, these are new asset classes, carbon credits that can come from nature.
Yeah.
So we've seen a lot of influx of money into those emerging industries and sectors.
You talk about the cost of doing this, but then the cost to not do this is far much more, isn't it?
Oh,
The cost to do nothing,
by
as I
orders
always
of
say.
magnitude more. You just ask anybody who works in the insurance industry.
Exactly.
In the US, for example, in the 1980s, there were about three what is called $1 billion events,
Mm.
payout events of over $1 billion due to extreme weather.
Yeah.
And just in the early 2020s, we've had over 20 of such events.
Yeah.
So that's $20 billion or more because the minimum, these are $1 billion events. Sometimes they're multiple $1 billion event payouts.
Mm.
These are all costs we pay because the insurance companies just increase their premiums. So
Exactly.
we all already pay a lot
Ultimately, we're going
more.
to be paying for that long term
We
as well.
already pay a lot more than this would
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah. I live on Canvey Island. It's renowned. So whenever you see a documentary about climate change, Canvey Island is the first place in the UK that goes underwater because it's below sea level, and they say that the sea level's rising. In the 50s, we had a flood because it's reclaimed land. We had a flood in the 50s, but in the last 5 years, it's flooded twice because of a problem, you know. But it's still flooded twice. That's twice more than what it did in the 50s, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
No one
they used
died,
to call
but it's still
these
a problem.
extreme weather events a century flood or a century storm, and then it happened again 2 years later. And what do you
Yeah,
then call that?
this is exactly.
So I don't think anybody actually doubts that the climate is changing because we all can see it. There's still people who discuss how much of it is human caused, but
Yeah.
that in a sense is also relevant because we know what we can do about it, and there are solutions,
Mm.
including investing more in nature, also for adaptation, investing more in nature for mitigating climate change, which are both cost effective and have so many multiple benefits. So in the book, I point out where and how to invest that kind of money, what we could do, how many jobs it would generate. This is
Mm.
also a huge employment sector, especially in rural areas.
Significant. people
Because
transitioning into the industry as well.
so,
It's
and it's a very gratifying job, to be honest, if
mm,
you can contribute to restoring a watershed or a peatland or a mountain area. You can rewild industrially managed farms, like in the Napa state in the UK. The UK actually has a lot of good examples that are emerging now for restoration or rewilding, as it's called in some cases.
mm,
So there is a lot happening, and I think the book, the title I chose because it's also the hashtag of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So if you go on Instagram, there's about 140,000 posts on generation restoration already, because there's so much happening. And we wanted, when we designed the UN Decade I was at the UN, we wanted to make sure we can make visible how everybody can contribute to something at the UN level, which sounds, very abstract to many, but that hashtag enables us to trace all the things that are happening across restoration in the world. And it's really encouraging how much is already happening. So I'm convinced that there's a movement underfoot that is really, really powerful and positive, and that has its origins in our realization that we are part of nature. Humans are
yeah,
part of nature. And because we realize that, of course, we also come to nature's defense now, and we will help to restore nature.
yeah. I always call it a three-pronged approach. So my background, my way of giving back, I reduce energy, which reduces carbon. Yeah, so energy management is one of the prongs that we need to be using. We need to be driving down people's waste of energy. Then we need to be introducing renewables, again, to drive down the carbon reduction as such from generation of that energy. And then the third prong, which is the environment. We need all three prongs, all three expert groups to be working together on this one task. It all comes together. That's why I try to interview a wide spectrum of those three experts, basically,
That, that's
to
uh,
deliver
that's
the
amazing
message.
because that's exactly actually our approach at Salesforce that we're now following. We invest in the energy transition,
Mhm.
renewables, and especially power sector decarbonization, which is accelerating, but still there's a lot of difficulties that we can hopefully overcome. Then we invest in nature positive solutions. And our third pillar is what we call ecopreneurs. So we want to make sure we fund and help and promote all these startups that are making it their business to provide energy solutions, climate solutions, nature solutions. We work with over 50,000 ecopreneurs, and there's more and more each day almost through the World Economic Forum to help them make sure they can enter this as a market. Because I think for this to scale, you need to show, especially to young people, what is my career path here?
Yeah,
How can I turn this passion I have for the environment or for making the world a better place into a business opportunity? And there's a lot of activity in this space.
yeah. Well, Tim, this we could. I normally give us 45 minutes. I think we've stretched that. Don't worry. Um, but we could talk forever on this, and I'd like to probably catch up another time to do more talking. But it's come to that time in the interview where I'm going to put you on the spot, which it isn't putting you on the spot because I know you're going to rise to where we're going to go with this. But is there something you can give back to the people out there listening to this? Is there one thing that you would like to share today as a takeaway for them?
Yes, 5 years ago, I would have said you should recycle and bike to work, and you should do that. And we all have seen these to-do lists,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
are
yeah,
all, I think, slightly tired of them because they always sound like this is it has to do with reduction and with not doing things. Instead, today, I would say listen to nature. Go out into nature, spend time listening, understanding how our planet actually works, because we're not just passengers here, we're the stewards,
yeah,
we're the guardians of planet Earth. And for that, we need to understand how nature works. So go out into nature, listen to nature. It will change your mind. And once your mind is changed, it will change your behavior for the
yeah,
better. I don't want to prescribe what anybody should do, But I think automatically, when you're more in tune with nature, you will do better things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I knew you'd have a great answer for that. Well, it's been an absolutely amazing interview. And I love the interviews where I don't really know what I'm going to be in. I get introduced to someone and they say, right, you need to be interviewing this person. And yeah, it's been absolutely awesome. I really appreciate you reaching out to us um, and sort of sharing the fact that you've got this book, but more importantly, that your story is amazing. And I'm sure that I'm obviously going to be ordering that book and reading that book. So I love reading
Well,
books
thank you
around
so
this
much, Paul,
subject.
and thank you for everything that you do. It's so important to get these stories and positive messages out there
Thank you.
and help people. And good luck with your tree planting in Thailand. I
Yes.
love to
I'm
stay
going to
in touch
be
about
I'm going
that.
to be knocking on your door
Absolutely.
for some advice on that. So thank you. So please, you and your family, you stay safe in these times.
Thank you. You too. Thanks.